Welcome. So, never done a voiceover for one of these before. I don't do a lot of these in general because I don't have the patience for a lot of this, to be honest. So, this is new on a lot of different levels. But for those of you who, pretty much anyone who does know me knows that I play a lot of D&D. And I just wanted to discuss the process of this piece a little bit because I am usually not one to do big group shots. Mainly for the reason that when you do a big group shot, suddenly you're not only worrying about proportions and anatomy for one character. Now you have to match that character's anatomy and their proportions to the other characters in the piece. You got to think about, okay, how far back in space is this person? Where should their feet go when they're standing? It suddenly becomes a lot more complex than it already was. So this piece did take a little more finagling just in composition, just in placement, because again, those are things that normally for just a fun, goofy D&D sketch, I don't spend a huge amount of time on because it's just something I'm doing for fun. It's not something that's been commissioned. It's not something that I'm working to make a highfalutin piece. It's just for fun. But for this one, I can definitely say that having lots of sketches beforehand, having that underlayer of sketches is huge. Makes all the difference for me anyway, and it always has for my style. I like to have lots and lots of underscribbles. But you can see here, I am filling in the lines and the pieces from Micah. I'm referencing an older picture that I drew of him from a couple of years ago, I think now. And that's another thing that people will tell you, people will well-meaningly say that, oh, you should do something from your imagination. That's great, but imagination is only going to take you so far. So really, once you get out there and you start working with these things, most artists or creatives I know, nothing happens in a vacuum. Reference your own stuff, reference other people's stuff. And for this one, because I only own the one character, the paladin up front in all the heavy armor. And the rest of these characters are actually all designed by friends from college. So I'm referencing their drawings, but in order to get to some of these things, there were a lot of Pinterest tabs open, there were a lot of research photos open. You'll actually see a little later on here, I pull up an Archer, like a video game concept art piece, to get the archer's position and form on the front left more correct, because you could see here, I'm leaving the hands and arms for last. Shocker. And that's another thing too, never be afraid to just go and get a ton of references. It makes life so much easier. You'll scream at your art way less. And in the end, I think you're gonna have a product you're much happier with. So pretty much all of these had a reference somewhere. I still would not say that they're great examples of human anatomy in hands, but for the size of the piece, for the goals that I had, which was, again, to have fun, it served well and it went well enough with the rest of the style that I was pretty happy with it. I did have to pull up a few other images that I had used or that I had made of this team in the past just to keep my weapons consistent and things like that, things I don't draw a ton. And again, just reiterating that people who don't do art will tell you that, okay, well, using a reference is kind of like cheating. It's not, because there's never been an artist who didn't use some type of reference. Overall, it informs your artwork, it makes it better, so don't believe them. But yeah, so the goal here was to make just a really fun piece with all of these different player characters from our most recent D&D game. So we have, from left to right, we have a Seeker, which is a 4th edition specific class. It's like a mix between a shaman and a ranger. So they use the bow and arrow, they have the dual wielding weapons, but they're also summoning a lot of nature spirits and things like that. Now behind them on the left, we have our wizard, and he is, like most archetypal wizards, very clever, very curious. This one has a very deep, tragic, angsty backstory. His design is definitely more hobo. I don't want to say chic because it's not, but hobo inspired. He's a little bit of a sad character right now. We're hoping to get him readjusted to life and himself. And then to the right of our wizard, we have our bard with his guitar, and you can see I originally, the reference image I had used had an electric guitar, which is not what this character uses. So I had to go back and find a acoustic guitar and plug that in a little later on, and it looks much more like this character than it would have otherwise. So happy with that. You'll also see when I'm working on the bard, his cowboy boots give me so much grief. I cannot, it goes by fast here, but I cannot even begin to describe how long those friggin' boots took. And then by the end of this, for composition reasons and just to move the piece along, I ended up having to layer something on top of them anyway, and you can see those pieces getting developed here. All that work on those boots, all those different drafts of friggin' cowboy boots facing the camera, and I ended up covering up most of them anyway, so there you go. This is what we do for our creative pursuits, I tell ya. But those are our kind of controllers or buff experts over on the left there. And then out in front on the right-hand side, we have our two tanks. Now, the middle one, again, is my character. This is Micah. He's a paladin. His goddess is a deity for love, freedom, and friendship. Mostly because the last couple of years have really tested my belief in the good of humanity. And I needed to play a character who still believed that people were capable of being better to each other. So he's been helping me readjust after the shit show that has been the last 4 years. And then to the right of him, we have Yeva, our monk, but she is tons of fun. I've never played a monk, but man, after watching my friend play this character, I want to sometime, because Yeva is famously able to run into a battle, beat up the villain, and usually by the time my character gets there or the rest of us get on the scene, Yeva's already done and is ready to leave again. So we run in to back up Yeva right as Yeva is like, yeah, okay, we're done, and then we just leave again. On the off chance that she does get hit, then she goes down pretty fast, but it's a rarer thing. So that's kind of the running gag so far, is that by the time we get on scene, Yeva is already done. But she's fun, she's a goofball, and I learned a few different styles of, and I'm going to butcher this, I apologize, a tisha, a Jewish headscarf. A tisha, a Jewish headscarf. I'm sure I butchered that, so I apologize. But it's been really interesting. It makes her fashion a lot more, I don't want to say it, well, yeah, for a white girl drawing characters from different cultures, you know, she's a good challenge, because I definitely stick to my fashion choices that I enjoy, and Yeva has her own very specific style here as a monk and as someone who wears a tisha that challenges me to kind of find different solutions for what I want to put her in that would still be true to her and to her beliefs. So I appreciate that about her as well from a design standpoint. And then in the background here, we have a move, actually. Our DM calls it the ult ability for our seeker, our archer, over on the far left. But it's called Stampede Shot. And this has been with this seeker since level 1 for this character. Stampede Shot essentially means that they can shoot an arrow, and from the arrow, or kind of in the trail of the arrow, a spectral stampede of animals follows and just destroys or stampedes over whoever is the target or recipient. And it's very, very cool. We've done some cool descriptive stuff with that in campaigns so far. So we have these kind of rainbow creatures that are being developed in the background. And for those, I just used Alpha Lock and some watercolor brushes. to make sure that we give our wizard a spot to shine. He's not just waving his hands around for no reason. He has a little electric crackly fireball going on. And for the fireball, I actually used just some regular kind of paint tools, some airbrushes, and I liberally used Alpha Lock to keep that kind of design the same while I adjusted colors with the watercolor brushes again. And then I just made sure that there was some lighting to match what should be coming off of that fireball, kind of tie that together, make it make sense over there. And then the rest of this is just kind of finishing up details, adding some patterns or some interest to characters who maybe aren't as sparkly and magical as some others, but are still really cool. So getting those meander patterns on the bard's poncho, getting the leaf print on Yeva's robe, even just some of the light that comes from that fireball, and then adding in one more animal in the back here just to kind of even it out and keep that movement, that motion going from left to right here. But yeah, so that's just a little bit about what we kind of worked on with this and what the goals were. So thanks for watching.